Hey, welcome to the Homebuyer Seminar. I'm your host, Bill Gross, at Bill Gross Probate on social media, along with my good friend, Patricia Castillo. What? Where'd you go? Shannon, what do you do with Patricia?
I know she's out there selling more listings on more appointments,
Yeah.
making the dream happen for people.
Well, and then speaking of making the dream happen or not, Shannon, the lender, our lender, what is up with the interest rates, Shannon? What are you doing, man? Get your foot off the gas pedal. They're going the wrong way.
I know. See, Patricia, now it's not me. When she's not here, rates go up. Okay.
Oh, that's what it is. You're going to throw her to the bus. So let's take a quick look at the interest rates here. Over 7. Now, we were over 7 through February from December or so, and previously. So it's not that far off the middle of where we've been, but they're up a bit. What's going on? What caused the rates to jump up all of a sudden?
I mean, honestly, I kind of expected this. This is something that we expected. We don't expect them to go down too much. Honestly, in too soon. That's why we're telling everyone in every show, assume that this is going to be the climate the rest of the year. Fed said, hey, we're gonna stay put for a minute. We're gonna stay put. So if I were you, I wouldn't wait for the quote unquote rates to go down this year if that's what you're waiting on. And I'll say it time and time again. And again, this episode is just another example of that. If you waited until now, again, you thought, okay, hey, it's summertime, it's gonna go down. Hey, this week is another testament to that.
Well, I think, just step back a little bit. Mortgage rates are based on U.S. government credit rates. Moody's reduced the U.S. government's credit rating as a reflection of our unstable finances. And I think if you were thinking of yourself as a family, if your total debt is 6 times your annual revenue as a government, or I think a multiple of your GDP 1 times or more, it's not sustainable. And so whether you're on one side or the other, if you're team red or team blue, or you're Democrat or Republican, it doesn't really matter. I can say this: a taxpayer who's paid a ton of taxes. This isn't sustainable, and no decent human being thinks it is. Anybody who thinks we can just keep spending money and borrowing in the future is telling you that for another reason. They're not telling you because they really believe it, or they don't know any better. But nobody can afford to just live on credit cards forever. And so, again, whether you're team red or blue, and I'm not saying we need to cut any particular spending, and I get people all exercise about that, and that's all political. But the reality is we either need to bring in a lot more money or spend a lot less money at the federal government level. And that's true at California as well. This is not even California yet, and it's not even Los Angeles. Los Angeles has a budget shortfall of over $1.5 billion and started laying off people. So I think here in Los Angeles and in California, we're facing a triple whammy. Other states have surpluses. I think some small state like Arkansas stopped their income tax because they have a surplus. So these are real issues, and I think these are learning opportunities. Now, what does this mean for buyers? If you've been shopping at 6.5%, now it's at 7%, it's going to cost you more. But what do you think the seller's thinking on the same token?
Yeah, I mean, the sellers in this climate too, you got to think a lot of these sellers are going to turn into buyers again as well. And if we're still have a shortage of inventory, I mean, even with the rates not going down, I still see sellers selling at the prices they want, especially in prime areas. I don't know about you, but I don't see prices going down, dramatically. Now, again, there's probably not a line around the door through open houses as there once were, back in, let's say, the 2020, 2021 climate. But, people are still getting offers in. So I think for buyers, still a good opportunity. You're not as competing as much. And for sellers, I think you still have that value there, because you can either sell or, hey, you have that equity still there. It's not like it's going anywhere, in my opinion. So.
Well, and I think that as a buyer, there are going to be some sellers who are nervous. There'll be some buyers who back out, and that's your opportunity, right? That if other buyers don't want to pay that, get into the escrow, you have a chance to, benefit from the situation.
That's actually a good point, is falling out of escrow. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. That's actually a really good point, Bill. I didn't think about that. Falling out of escrow. I've actually won a deal with someone fell out of escrow. So it was like 3-4 weeks ago. So that's actually a good point. And I think for those first-time homebuyers out there, when you're playing this bidding war, you honestly also too have to play that bidding war with your lender on your side to say, hey, what's this monthly payment if we do get it at this price? Because I know sometimes a lot of agents say, well, we'll get it back down. It doesn't happen all the time, right? And so just expect the worst case when you are going into these quote unquote bidding wars where, hey, I'm going to offer more, I'm offering more to get the deal done. But I'm seeing two escrows fall out because either one, they didn't lock their rate and now the rate went up, or number two, they didn't even think about what is the new monthly payment with, the bidding war that I just won, quote unquote. And on top of that, rates just climbed up a little bit. So that does create an atmosphere of, people falling out of escrow and not being able to perform. And I think going back to it, that's why you need a good team on your side to, because usually what I'm seeing is there's a pool of professionals that have a habit of that, right? So if you have that reputation, that's another thing, having a team with a good reputation that's known, hey, we can close, we will close, we're 9 out of 10, let's just say, because everyone always has that one. But it's actually a good point. So I didn't mean to go on that tangent there.
No, I think you're right on, and I think it's really important that if you're a buyer's agent and your buyer wants to back out, go through the paperwork, and that's what a good buyer's agent will help you do if you can't afford the new payment, and that's a possibility. On the flip side, if you're a seller's agent, listing agent like me, you want to get the buyer locked in tight so they can't back out. You want their deposit money in, you want their contingencies waived, you want all the disclosures in. The last thing you want to do is give them another piece of paper and have them say, you know what, based on this, I'm canceling the contract, because they can force you to go back to the market. And I'm not saying that prices are going down just because of the rise in rates, because it's not that significant. We went from just below 7, it's just slightly above it. But psychologically, it's a big number. 7 point something is a big number versus 6 point something to the marketplace. And so it's definitely important to pay attention to. So what are we doing on buyers who are already in an escrow and their rates are going up? We should be racing to get their contingencies cleared so their lock is still good, if they're still good, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you do, is have to extend a rate or pay more and relock it at a higher rate.
Climates like this is why I always suggest let's lock as soon as we open escrow. That's
Right.
always my model, because you don't want any surprises. Yes, the rate can go down, but guess what? It can also go up. And
Yeah.
at least if you refinance, you can choose when you refinance and always refi down if you want to. But if you're an escrow on a property, make sure you tell your lender, hey, let's lock. And especially if you're buying at the top of your purchase price or purchase power, let me say that. So if let's say you're qualified for 700,000 and you have a house and you're at 695, 699, right? I've even seen 700,000 with a $5,000, credit to make sure it's 700,000, right? If you're right at the top of that purchasing power when you're opening escrow, I highly recommend you lock your rate. Make sure you get some kind of confirmation from your lender. Hey, is the rate locked? Because especially if there's no wiggle room, you definitely don't want to play with that rate for sure. And make sure it's locked. Make sure you know when it expires. That's a good point. Because if you lock a rate in, let's say for 30 days, and you're at 35 days, you can extend the lock. You can, but it will cost you. It will cost you. The banks will always win at the end of the day. So, yeah, it's a good point, Bill.
Well, and also that's why when I do a podcast on real estate, and I talk about some of these flaky companies that will, advertise a rate to get you in, and then if rates go, they didn't really lock in. They tell you they're locked, but they're really not locked. And if rates go up, they say, well, it's costing us more now, so we'd rather be picky. We have more loans we can close. We'll be picky and pick the best ones and let the other ones go, and that's a way for them raising the price, right? If you're a mortgage lender, you get more money when you book a loan and the customer has a credit score of 720 than if they have 680, even though you might have approved a 680, and there might have been a rate adjustment because he has a lower credit score, she has a lower credit score. Just the fact that it's 720 means you get a better price. And so I was a lender my first part of my career. There's conference calls you have with management that says, hey, rates have jumped up. It's going to cost us a lot. We want money for bonuses unless we get, clear the pipeline out. And so they're going to take a loan out, get the little magnifying glass, look at every little piece of paper, look at every number. And that's why some of these, like LendingTree or Bankrate.com, these companies that advertise to get their business and they disappear and they reform as a new company, That's why you don't go with them. You go with somebody who's going to, lock you up front, as Shannon said, and work hard to get you cleared so you can close, because a rate lock is no good unless you can deliver it and close the deal.
Exactly. And I think that's why someone like me who's on the front lines, I'm not an internet company. I'm local. I live here. My reputation is important. So unfortunately, I don't have the luxury of just telling you, hey, I'm going to give you a 5.99 and advertise that everywhere.
Right.
I have to let you know, hey, this is really what it is. But I can turn to you one thing. What I say is what it is. That's where it's going to stay.
Right.
So, you're right. A lot of companies, they do promote and solicit, hey, we'll get you 4.99, right? And you don't either read the fine print, or they said that was yesterday's rate, or, whatever.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your FICO score is 790. We need a 791 minimum. Sorry, can't help you.
Exactly. So that's honestly one thing you have to watch out for these companies is they're online. And like you said, they can change the website, never to be called again. I'm local. I have to meet people. I have to see people. I remember I met you, Bill, at a few networking events a few years back. So it's like, I have to see these people at the end of the day. I have to show my face. So if I'm doing bad business, that's going to reflect on me. And going back to the credit thing too. Yes. I mean, your credit does impact a lot of things. So someone just spewing out a number to you without knowing your financials and knowing your situation is very, very dangerous. I could tell you, hey, in this bracket today, this is where we're at. These banks do have brackets. 700 to 720, 720 to 740, 740 plus. 680 to 700. Usually around 20 point difference is where the blocks are in terms of categories and when your rate really changes. But really watch out for those solicitations. So yeah.
If it looks like it's too good, it's probably too good. After all, it's the internet, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And I would say if you get your business because you advertise rather than a relationship, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And I think those people, the reason why this company is always acquiring and advertising, because nobody really would want to do business with them. Who would want to get a mortgage from Wells Fargo and BofA? And there are good originators of those companies. They're just the minority. There's some really good ones. They're just a minority, and despite the company's reputation, they do really well. Or because they get some traffic from the company, they do really well. But 9%, it's just a nightmare. It's like getting a checking account from those companies. Why would you think the mortgage would be different? Oh my gosh.
Exactly right. So I did have one topic I wanted to talk to you about. And since you being the probate expert,
yep.
For those first-time home buyers that are just looking at buying the house, but they don't know that there's so much that happens after and things that you have to do after. One, you want to kind of explain for the first-time home buyer, what is probate and how can someone protect their asset once it's bought? Because what I notice is when you close escrow, you think it's done. I got it. The war's over and that's it. I don't have to worry about anything else. But usually that's when this fight begins, and how you have to set things up. So this is a topic that, as a first-time home buyer, you have to realize there's more to buying a house than just buying the house. And, protecting your assets, one of them.
Well, great question. I think that the way I would think of it would be, if you were going to buy a substantial amount of gold, let's say, because you were worried about storing value, or you had some rare coins or baseball cards or something, depending who you are, in your house, you might have them on display, but you might have them locked up into a safe. And why would you do that? Because you want somebody to steal it. You also don't want, let's say if there's a fire in the house, you want it to be safe. You don't need it there, and it's a little bit of work to put in, take it out, but it has value. And I think an estate plan, when you're buying a house, particularly in California, is critical because why? There's a number of factors. One is succession. When it's time to pass, husband and wife will, I'm not giving legal advice, but my understanding as a realtor, automatically passes to the spouse when you pass. What happened if both spouses go? Who inherits? Well, if there's no will, California has what's called an intestate succession law, meaning, generally speaking, goes to the kids, and then there's a whole list of who gets it after that. If you have a will,
after the kids, I'm just curious.
Well,
Who's
it
the
could
next in
be
line?
if the kids have kids have kids
got
sometimes.
it.
So
Grandkids.
oftentimes you'll have mom and dad died. There's 4 kids, but one of the kids died, but he had 3 kids, so they inherit the parents' portion.
Got it.
The parents would be, as well in line if they're still alive.
Got it. Okay.
And then I don't know the exact order, but
Is that
sometimes
auntie,
there's
uncle? I'm just trying to see. Who's the
yeah,
next
because
in line.
it's whoever's next of kin based on this prioritization. And so, famous example, Howard Hughes died famously, never married, no kids, but he had parents, and then his parents had siblings, and they had kids, and he had I forget how many cousins. I want to say 20 or 30 cousins. So Hughes Aircraft got split up into all these different companies because, in that case, you can't give everybody 1/20th or whatever it is of major corporation because someone to sell it. You have to sell the whole thing. So the Dodgers got sold from the O'Malley family because they couldn't split up the value of the Dodgers, and not all the siblings could afford to keep it. And there's tax consequences when you inherit something. You have to pay taxes. So imagine if you inherit $1 billion company, you might have to pay. I don't know the exact number, depending on your taxes and such. You might have to pay $200, $300, $400 million in taxes. Well, if all you have is the company, you can borrow against it. That's risky. Most people end up selling the company and taking the proceeds and paying taxes. Same with the house. And so, again, it's not just that you would lose the house. It's what if you have multiple kids? What if you have, divorces, prior marriages, blended families, charities you want to support? What if you're sick and you can't take care of your own affairs? That's another reason why you'd want to protect your spouse. And so an estate plan has health issues, health directives, so that if your spouse, you can avoid having all your equity tied up in say, medical care for your spouse. There's ways to do it lawfully to protect yourself. So it's a lot of issues. I have a podcast called Estate Planning Weekly where I interview estate planners regularly. But I would say this, my business advice, not legal, obviously, anybody who owns a house in California should have an estate plan. And I would say 90% of the time it's going to include, at least 90% of the time will include a trust. A will not get you out of probate in most cases. Now there's a change in the law, and if you want to rely on that, because it's untested, it's just for people who've passed since April 1st, and really, obviously, not that many people have, and so that particular law is untested. But I would say, my recommendation, anybody could get a basic estate plan for about $1,500 online. I think
pretty good.
90% of the time it's better than nothing. It's not as good as a good plan with a real attorney. This will cost maybe $3,000 to $5,000. You have complicated financials, you have a business, blended family, multiple kids, significant wealth, tax issues, could cost you more than that. But that would be a small percentage of what it would cost if you don't, and you have to go to court to contest and probate, or the siblings are fighting. So at a minimum, you should have a will. That's free. At a minimum, I think you should have an estate plan. That could be pretty cheap. And I would say, generally speaking, most people should, if you have a house and you have kids, you should at least, it's worth the preparation to get an attorney. And if you're buying the house, here's the reason why you want to do it when you're buying. Because if you form the trust before you buy the house, you can buy the property in the name of the trust, and that sale becomes an insured transaction. You have title insurance guaranteeing the title is yours in that trust. One of the challenges people have is when you close, when you buy a house, and let's say you buy your name, Bill Nancy Gross in my case, and then we later get a trust and deed it in the trust. Well, we have to do the deed, has to be done properly, and then we have to record it, and it has to be done, all it has to happen properly. Now, one of the problems is sometimes a title company look at that and say, well, that's odd. You bought the house, and then a month later they put it in the trust. The signature looks different. This looks different. Somebody could say, hey, it's a fraudulent deed. So the beauty of doing it when you're buying is you have title insurance who's going to guarantee that is the right location, it's that trust, and then you can protect your family that way. So I strongly recommend, if you're looking to buy, it's a good time to talk about those issues. If you can't afford it, you can't afford it. But if you can afford it, I'd say it's a small price to pay to ensure peace of mind for you, your family, your kids, and so on.
Wow. So you're saying that even if I buy it and then I put in the trust later, between those two titles, someone can fight the discrepancies between whatever and get that null and void? Is that
well, anybody can fight anything, but I'll tell you things I've seen. I've seen where after the sale, the buyer prepares the deed and it's wrong, has the wrong APN, assessor parcel number. The title is slightly, the property address is slightly wrong. The name is different. Maybe the wife gets married and has her maiden name on them when she bought the property, and she's married when they deed it into the trust themselves. Common cases, they do the deed but forget to record it. Or maybe the recorder lost it. But if you don't verify it's recorded, I've had customers who, when I ask them about it, give me their estate planning book, like a folder with inside a binder book, and they pull out the deed, and there it is, but they never recorded it. So it's important that the recording establishes the timing of a priority. So for example, if you buy the property, it's in your estate, you were insured as of that date. If you wait, let's say a month, and somebody sleeps ahead of you and puts another mortgage on your property or deeds it to themselves, if theirs gets theirs before yours, they could say, oh, well, no, when you bought it in your names, you actually sold it to me. And when you deeded the trust, you'd already sold it to me and you're frauding me. Now, does it happen often? No, but it's happening more often. There are, criminals. This is white collar crime. It's happening more and more. I heard of an example where criminals moved into a house in Beverly Hills and they started, getting the mail, and they had the phone come to their house, and somebody would call the bank and have stuff changed, the addresses, and just took over the whole property legally as a result, just being there for like 2 weeks. So again, I don't think it's something you should keep up at night. I just think it's a good practice. If you're going to buy a property, you're paying for title insurance. If your plans to put it into an estate plan or a trust, why not do that while you're in escrow? You got plenty of time to do it. And again, a cheap one online, LegalZoom, trustandwill.com is better than nothing. Better yet is a proper attorney and a proper plan. But if you can't do that or won't do that, at least get something. Now you can always, here's the other thing. You can get a basic plan online, let's say from LegalZoom, and then go to another attorney and you can change the terms of the deed, of the trust. You can restate the trust with new terms, but it's the same name, and so it's been recorded already in the name of your trust. And so that way the title insurance is in effect for your deed.
Wow. So you can create the trust, put it under, while you're in escrow, put the property under that trust, and then pretty much amend it if you want to
trust,
change anything with an attorney. So like you said, if you're in a time crunch, this is good information. If you're in a time crunch, go to LegalZoom, get it done, and then you can change, like you said, or amend the trust with an attorney after the fact. Because I know a lot of times people are, rushing you through escrow. So that's a good advice.
That's not ideal. I mean, again, the ideal would be to get a proper attorney to look at your case, particularly if you have blended family, if you have a business. Yeah, if you have a business, you have other assets more than the house, you have millions of dollars worth of assets to protect, of course you should have a proper plan. But at a minimum, if all you're doing is, if the only asset in the world you have is your first-time house, I believe, as a businessman, not as a legal advisor, and I have attorneys who disagree with me, though most when I ask this question will agree with me hesitatingly, they'll say it's better than nothing. Because you can always amend it, you can always restate it, and 90% of the time, even as it is, it's better than nothing. It's better than a will, it's better than going to probate court.
No, that's interesting. That's interesting. So I think that's great for first-time home buyers is, hey, you guys got to think about this. It's not just buying the house. You got to think long-term, right? Obviously, being a first-time home buyer is a monumental step in anyone's journey. I'm not going to discredit that at all. What I'm saying is as a first-time home buyer, I would say start thinking like one now. And a part of thinking like one now is starting to protect what's soon to be yours. It's kind of like, hey, you're so excited to have a bike, but you didn't buy a bike lock, right? You didn't buy, storage space for it. So this is pretty much the same thing as, hey, think about the protection of it, the safety of it, before. Actually, that's a great point. And I didn't know that you could probably do it during escrow. And I have closed, now I'm thinking about it, I have closed properties under the trust. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a trust. I'm buying a rental property. We're actually closing July 15th, but I create a separate LLC, and I opened it on Monday, and I already got the state of California approval on the EIN number by Wednesday, so I can deed it in the LLC, and then the LLC is owned by my trust. So all that's done ahead of time to protect the asset, because I'm putting a lot of money into it. It's worth a lot of money, and I don't want to lose it. Do I need it? It's one of those things where it's like insurance. For my business, it's so funny. I have a mailing address at a Regis executive office in Beverly Hills on Wilshire Boulevard. By Department of Real Estate Law, if you use an address for marketing, you have to get it licensed. And of course, if you use somebody's office, they want you to pay for it. On top of that, my company wants me to have liability insurance, and it costs like $500 a year to have insurance. I haven't been in that place. I've been there twice in 5 years. I pay $500 insurance. in essence, per year. But that's the price of the protection. And, I'm not happy about it, but I'm glad not to be sued. I'm glad to have the rights to have the office. And so I think the estate plan, to me, if you're trying to build long-term wealth, this is a tool that will be important to you and also for your legacy to pass it down. I go to probate court regularly and see legacy wealth just torn apart by attorney's fees. It's just terrible. I'm in a case right now. Mother and father passed, both. Mother had a trust. Father, prior marriage, didn't. And he had one house worth like about $800,000, another half of another house worth about $350,000. All that money is used up by the attorneys, conservatorships, because he was sick before he died. All of it's gone, basically. I don't think they know it's going to be a short sale when we close. I think. I'm not sure, but I think so. But the mother's side had a trust, so there's no argument. She owns half the house, so we're going to close on it.
Wow.
So yeah, it's definitely worth it, I think, in the long run.
No, that's good. Protect what is soon to be yours, guys. Especially when thinking about buying, it's very important. So I think it's a good topic we needed to cover for the day.
Well, thanks. And you're newly married. Someday
Yes.
you'll have kids. And so the other reason why you have this is for children, because one of the questions is, God forbid what happens if both of you were to pass, right? I mean, in my case, my daughter is married and has 2 kids so far, and she has 2 sets of grandparents. But who makes the decisions? Yeah, we get along now, but when you start making decisions about your grandkids, all of a sudden you can start fighting and you want that squabbling. So in a part of the estate plan, you make those decisions. Who's going to be responsible for children? Health directives, who makes medical decisions? Spouse has certain rights, they don't have other rights. Famously, Jay Leno had to go to court because he didn't have a proper estate plan for his wife, including medical directives. He had to file a conservatorship to have the rights to make decisions for her. As a result, this guy's spent probably tens of millions of dollars on legal fees in his life and didn't have that taken care of. And I'm sure it was humiliating to go to court and ask for approval to be able to take care of his wife. But that's what happens if you don't have a plan. And so failure to plan is planning to fail. Let's not do that, guys.
Yeah. If you don't have a plan, the state will have one for you. It's not always the best one.
No, it looks like the DMV is just not that pleasant.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, the DMV is much nicer than probate court. Much more fun.
Wow. There you guys have it. Get a trust going for sure before. Talk to an attorney if you can. And I'm pretty sure Bill can recommend you guys one if you guys need it. But very, very important to have on your team.
Yes.
Yes. All right, Bill.
I think we're good. We're a little long today, but that's a fun topic. When I'm very passionate about it, as you can probably tell. So we'll wrap up. Shannon, someone wants to get a hold of you and talk a little bit more about mortgages, getting pre-approved, getting pre-qualified, or maybe the deal fell out somewhere else, but they want to get started with you. How they get a hold of you?
Yeah. Obviously, my phone number is 661-317-8484 or the famous FUND Fund with Shannon on Instagram.
Fund with Shannon.
Yes.
Don't forget the D, Fund with Shannon. Okay, good. Yeah. I'm Bill Gross, at Bill Gross Probate on social media. Shout out to Patricia. You're in our prayers. Hope all is well. And we'll talk to you guys soon. As always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much, everybody.
Love it.
And it's stuck. Still recording. Why are you not stopping?
There, guys.
Still recording. I hit the button.